for Naomi as well as for herself, Ruth goes and does it. And Ruth was taking a risk, if you think about it, right? She's a Moabitess. She's a foreigner. She's turned up here. And stranger might not be appreciated intruding into this local custom. But Ruth's there. It's self-sacrificial, it's unselfish, and it's kindness. See, but that's not all, is it? Because Ruth follows her mother-in-law's risky threshing floor plan. Yeah, I mean, you know that Naomi's idea was to get a husband for Ruth. But in Boaz's mind, at least as I read it, the request was another way for Ruth to be caring for her mother-in-law and for the property, the whole box and dice. Getting the property back in the family, raising up a grandson to inherit it, and I suspect looking after Naomi in the meantime. And Boaz is saying of Ruth, woman, but he's saying, this is amazing that you're doing this. Right? See, Ruth's behaviour was self-sacrificial kindness to her mother-in-law, to someone in need, really in need. Now, there's no special law that said she had to do it, but she did it. Right? See, Naomi even said to her on the road back, she says, "Go back. It's going to be too hard." And Ruth says, "No, I'm sticking with you." Right? That's chesed. That's chesed. Ruth insisted on caring, insisted on showing kindness for her needy mother-in-law. And the principle here is care for needy people where you can, unselfishly, even when it means self-sacrifice. Unselfish kindness in action. And what about Boaz? Well, think of the incident in the field. What does he do for Ruth? Think about it. Slow down. Boaz lets Ruth glean close to his women sheaf binders. You see, here we go. I don't know that I demonstrated this before. Okay, you had the fellas. The fellas would cut the stuff off and they'd hand it back. And the girls would take it and they'd bind it up and then they'd stick it in stooks, heaps. Okay? So, she's right up there with his people getting the bits and pieces that are falling. Right? She's right in amongst it. Right? Boaz tells his men, don't tell her off. Don't scold her. He says to her, "You want a drink?" "I know, it belongs to the firm, but you're in, right? You can have a drink." Okay? He says, "Lunch? Come and eat with us. There's enough left over for a doggy bag." And when she goes on gleaning, Boaz says to the fellas, "Drop some extra bits on the ground so she'll have stuff to have." I mean, he's going above and beyond, right? Because he cares, right? This is kindness. She's in need. He's generous to someone in need. And then, what about at the gate? At the gate, Mr. Poloni Almoni comes along and he balks at the possibility that it's going to cost him something if he has to marry Ruth. What does Boaz do? Takes it on board. The whole box and dice. Principle is care for needy people where you can, willingly, generously. It's unselfish kindness. Start with your concentric circles. Okay. Yeah, it's chesed, unselfish kindness. That's the special word. It's what's called in the book of Ruth. It's difficult to get a grip on it, and as you can see from the different translations, what have we had? Something like, I've got it here. Steadfast love, I think, came up in the psalm, right? Love in another psalm. Kindness in another place. Sometimes it's translated as mercy or loving kindness. And that's why I think it's an advantage to see, we'll see some more later on, but to see what it looks like on the ground. You can do all sorts of definitions, all sorts of words, but to see it, this is how it works. Okay? This is chesed. And why that matters is because chesed is what the Lord wants us, his people, to practice. Then, and he wanted then and now. And think of Ruth's chesed actions. This is what Boaz says. We just looked at it, but we'll keep going. Boaz says, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness, chesed, got it, greater than the first in that you have not gone after young men, whether rich or poor. See, what's her first chesed? Well, we just talked about it. Right? She left this sacrificial commitment to go with Naomi and like we saw in the field, leaves everything and cares for her mother-in-law. And what's her present chesed? Because he said, your present chesed's better than your former one. And this is where people argue, and we can talk about this later if you want. But I think that a case can be made that she'd given up better prospects for marriage, the younger fellas, whether rich or poor, to marry him for the sake of her mother-in-law, right? Because this would now that I'm saying that's not what Naomi was saying, I don't think, but I think it's what Boaz heard, right? Because she used the R word, redeem, see? And that's what Boaz goes and does then, right? It's the whole box and dots, not just getting married. Okay. And so this is, now it may be that he's just excited. Maybe he's just excited, so excited that she's going to marry him, He was having a hard time and nobody liked him or something, That he says, this is fantastic, this is the best. Well, that's okay. I'm not saying that's wrong. It is possible. Whatever the case is, he's seeing her as unselfish kindness in action. Self-sacrificial. That's chesed. And that's for us as well. And Boaz's actions as well, what we've been talking about. Naomi says to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness, chesed, has not forsaken the living or the dead. Now, you can read that in one of two ways. And the way that comes out there, it looks like the chesed is the Lord's chesed, and we can talk about that in a minute. Right? But it's also possible that Naomi there is talking about Boaz's chesed, right? What he had done. And we saw what he did. His kindness, his loving kindness, his unselfish free, meeting the need and doing it generously. Chesed. It's good. Be like them. God's people are called to be chesed people because they belong to him. Now, in the book of Ruth, it's illustrated. We've seen the illustration. The prophet Isaiah really nails it down when he tells us to be like the Lord, and we'll see how that works in a minute. But we're in Micah, and this is what it says. He's told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness, chesed, right? I mean, this is a famous verse that lots of people know, right? And walk humbly with your God. Yeah? Do justice, love chesed, and walk humbly with your God. That's what the Lord wants in his people, including us, and loving it. But there's another reason for doing chesed, doing kindness, unselfish kindness. Yes, be like Ruth and be like Boaz. But behind that there's another reason, a better reason. Do chesed, unselfish kindness. That is the steadfast, it's going to be translated steadfast love. But do chesed because that's what the Lord does. Yeah? That's behind it. It's what the Lord does. The Lord is a God who delights in chesed. Micah chapter 7 verses 18 and 19. Who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over the transgression of the remnant of his inheritance? He does not retain his anger forever because he delights in steadfast love, chesed. He will again have compassion on us. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. He will cast all our sins into the depths of the sea. Now, first of all, before we say chesed an example, just step back and think about that. Cast all your iniquities into the depths of the sea. Some people have put it without bottom, without shore. Right? That's the deal. It's magnificent. And the Lord delights in showing steadfast love. Right? It's not that he's grudging and not willing. He delights in showing chesed. Now, in this case, the particular chesed he shows is having compassion on guilty people. It says it in the context. Forgiving their sin, because that's their need. You see, it's meeting a need, and that's the biggest need, because What's the problem that we have? Our problem is, our need by nature is facing judgment, God's judgment for sin. And God says, I provide a way to deal with that and to save you. A place of safety, he meets the need. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But that's the Lord, acting with chesed. It's meeting the needs of the needy with kindness. Meeting the needs of the needy is what the Lord does. In forgiving sin and a whole range of other things which you can sing about in Psalm 136 sometime. Now, Naomi knows that the Lord acts this way, that is, with kindness. This is why she says to her daughters-in-law on the road to Bethlehem, may the Lord deal kindly, deal with chesed, do chesed with you, as you've dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you might find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. See? They had a need, and she knows the Lord does these sorts of things, not compelled to, but he's kind. And that's what she was seeking that the Lord would do. And as we said last week, as far as Ruth was concerned at least, he did. Right? This is how the Lord is. He does chesed. He does kindness. He acts with loving kindness. What did the girls need? They needed security in a home and a husband. Naomi appeals to the Lord and his loving kindness, chesed. And look, the Lord does it. This is what we're trying to focus on. Now, the Lord does it. This is the big reason. The Lord does it in the Psalms. Very much in the Psalms. This meeting needs kindness aspect of our God's nature. We sang about it in the Psalms we've sung tonight, every one. It occurs over 120 times in the Psalms. Right? The Lord's chesed. Right? So it's obviously very important. Sometimes it's translated mercy. That's okay. I just think, I don't know what you think about the word mercy. Mercy to me can sound a little bit cold. Okay, maybe not, but anyway, because it's not a cold thing here, right? And so loving kindness, steadfast love is good. And so I give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love, his chesed, endures forever. And what did that look like in Psalm 107? Well, you go through 107, you see what it is. You see the context tells us. The Lord gathers them from the lands, from north, south, east and west. He brings them through the desert. He delivers them from thirst and hunger. He brings them to a city, all things that they needed, that they couldn't do themselves. But the Lord does it. That's chesed. That's what the Lord does. And he goes, he releases some from prison. He rescues them from storms at sea. He gives them fruitful harvests. He lifts up the needy. It says it in Psalm 107. So you look at Psalm 107, that's what chesed looks like from the Lord. And the Lord, yes, forgiving our sin, but he does all those things in our lives as well, graciously, kindly. He doesn't have to, but he does. And so the psalm concludes, whoever is wise, let him attend to these things. Let them consider the steadfast love, the chesed of the Lord. That's what the Lord does. Did it then, does it now. And it's ongoing. So Ruth and Boaz lived the chesed way, like our Lord, and so they were godly people. For us to live the chesed way is to be godly people. To act like the Lord, meeting the needs of others, unselfishly, self-sacrificially. That's the call. You see, and now